Hello and welcome to Identity Office Hours. I'm your host, Mike Schwartz, founder of Glue. Today is episode 113. The topic is MOSIP, Verifiable Credentials Update. Quick reminder, if you want to support the live stream, please follow us on LinkedIn. Also, please comment on the takeaways that I publish after each episode. That helps us get the attention of the LinkedIn algorithm. Our guest today is Ramesh, the CTO of MOSIP, who was formerly on episode 90. Welcome, Ramesh.
Hello, Mike. Hello, everyone.
We might have Sassy joining us later. If he joins us, we'll add him in. Sassy was a guest on episode, I think, 72. Yeah, episode 72. Sassy's the head of engineering. If he joins us, we'll overload him with Bluetooth low energy questions. For right now, Ramesh is in the hot seat. We're going to skip intros because Ramesh was formerly a guest. So if you want to know about Ramesh's background, just go back to episode 90 at the beginning. But Ramesh, why don't we just start with sort of a real general question? You've announced a new digital wallet called the NG Digital Wallet. My first question is an easy one. Why is it called the NG wallet? What does NG mean, and why did you choose that name?
And a couple of simple considerations. We wanted something that could be easy to pronounce and not mispronounced across the world. And we
Mm-hmm.
also wanted to have some meaning. We did some research and we found that the Korean word inji means recognition or some kind of acknowledgement. So when we want to get people and their identity acknowledged, so we thought it might be a good fit. So that's how we went for that.
Interesting. I
Yeah.
assume with the vast number of Indian languages that it would be an Indian word, but that's fascinating. um, let's talk a little bit about this wallet. Um, And so one of the interesting things is that, so correct me if I'm wrong, but this wallet is basically using BLE or Bluetooth Low Energy as the transport layer. Is that right?
It's right. It's one of the transport mechanisms that we support, and but it's an important one because we want to enable usage of wallet in offline scenarios where the infrastructure is low and connectivity to the internet is not a given. So we wanted the wallets to operate even in those environments. So the BLE protocol plays a big role in enabling such transactions.
And did you look what are some of the other transport mechanisms? And did you look at things like QR codes or NFC or other offline mechanisms besides BLE?
We do have a QR based presentation,
Mm-hmm.
and that can be used, but obviously there are restrictions to the amount of data that can be shared over QR code. So
Hmm.
it's only for a limited set of credentials, not for all kinds of credentials that might be in the wallet. Actually, for the identity credentials in the QR code, we have worked on a binary format using CBOR, and the structure for that is published in IANA as Claim 169. And anybody who wants to actually use it can use the Claim 169 specification to be able to interpret it and consume the identity claims. So this is something where our ecosystem, multiple players are actually beginning to use the QR based presentation. NFC is something that our partner ecosystem has expressed interest in implementing, and we are looking
Mm-hmm.
forward to that contribution to come in soon.
Right. Was there any concerns about BLE? Because as I remember, BLE uses the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum, which can be very noisy, with Wi-Fi routers and lots of devices. There's other devices, I think, even like microwave ovens, I think, use that frequency. Um, was there any concerns or implications around BLE, and perhaps workarounds, like if transmissions interrupted because of that type of like interference?
Uh, Good actually that you brought this up. Uh, if you look at our NG wallet, the number of components that we have is not very high. Uh, but the BLE is something that took us about a year and a half to crack properly,
Mm-hmm.
because there are challenges with operating system versions and the way the chip versions and the operating system versions, API versions, they interact. And across Android and iOS, there were enough challenges to make sure that the experience is seamless. And it took a lot of testing with at least 20 odd devices for us to be able to actually get it right. And that is the that's the work that has gone in. We saw challenges more from multiple devices being used at the same time, or multiple BLE connections on that particular device. So
Mm-hmm.
those are the kind of challenges, rather than interference from Wi-Fi or other devices. So the phones
Right.
themselves, multiple phones are around, discovering the right one, getting the negotiation going. Uh, that's a little bit more tricky than interference itself.
Right. I remember talking to Christina Yasuda like maybe 2 years ago, and she was telling me that you guys were really doing some great work in BLE. So I've been sort of looking for it. And there's an OpenID spec that I reference in the notes from, I think it's from 2023, like a OpenID verifiable presentation over BLE. Um, has that evolved at all since you developed it? Because I noticed it's still a 0.0 draft. Um, has that evolved at all? Or are you using that in the wallet?
We are very much using that in the wallet. Uh, in fact, the reason for it not changing much is twofold. One is that we didn't even publish it till we had done a lot of testing in the first
Mm-hmm.
place. And so it was not experimentation alongside the draft, but it was experimentation before and then publication later. So we know that it works across operating systems. It's in kind of a sweet spot in that sense. That's one reason. The second reason is, I think, more to do with the fact that standards work. There is a lot going on in parallel, and there is obviously the MDoc uh, Bluetooth channel, and then we have the DITCOM also supporting Bluetooth. So there's a lot of work going on, and so that's why I think. And apart from this, there are multiple aspects of the entire verifiable credential chain, from the issuance to the trust networks to the presentation. Simply way too much going on, and this has not gotten sufficient attention. As usual, the global south always comes last. People are building and finalizing protocols that work in well endowed environments first. So,
Right. Although in this case, I think that this is really pretty cutting edge, though, because I mean, I'm not doing a BLE presentation in Texas, so although that is the South too, or in South America. um, but what would this presentation look like? Maybe just walk me through. I'm a person in a remote area with no connectivity, and I want to do a BLE presentation with a wallet. Just at a high level, like what does this look like?
yeah.
How,
So
how would the user experience that?
So this is following the OpenID for verifiable presentation flow per se. There are there's largely at a very high level two steps. The first is basically a negotiation, and then
Mhm.
subsequently the actual data transfer. So the negotiation is initiated by uh, the wallet scanning a QR code of the receiver. Basically, the relying
Okay.
party who wants to receive the credentials would publish their coordinates, BLE coordinates.
Ah,
using
okay,
a
so it's still bootstrapped with a QR code, but you're not
Yes,
putting the credential in the QR code. Right.
right.
I think we saw something similar also with cross-device negotiation. But okay, so you get pulled over by the cop. You present your QR code. The verifier scans that QR code to bootstrap the BLE connection. That's right.
It's the other way around. The
Okay.
verifier actually shows the QR code,
Uh,
and the wallet is going to scan that because that contains the request. So the coordinates as well as what is being requested are there in the QR code, and
okay.
it also includes who the verifier is in this case. So the
Interesting.
wallet can do a check that they are actually sharing it with a cop really, or is it somebody else posing as a cop, right?
Uh-huh.
Because the request is signed, and so they start with that. And once the wallet scans that, it uses that and then establishes a BLE connection with the other one.
Okay.
Unlike regular Bluetooth, BLE doesn't require pairing, so it avoids a complex pairing exercise,
Yeah. I
and it
hate
can,
pairing.
yeah, everybody does that. Uh, and so we were then able to get into the actual data transfer mode, and the data transfer has a lot of challenges, as you said: the distance, the version, the strength, the battery level, many things
Yeah.
matter. And but we have managed to build a resilient transfer, which with retries built in, which
Hmm.
actually takes care of successfully moving the data. And with that, once that is done, the receiver has the full data. They then they are able to close the transaction by sending an ACK back.
Right. Um, Now, I don't know a whole lot about BLE, to be honest. And are there any restrictions on operating systems? Like I know when you get into some of these newer features with Android versus iOS and different versions of Android, um, did what operating systems would you say you're going to support? And did you see a lot of challenges around just operating systems having differences in how they implement BLE?
Absolutely, there are significant differences. So the discovery of the device and how you actually negotiate the connection, the mechanisms are different across from Android and iOS. So we try to use what's called as an advertisement uh, that is supported, and as a result, the exchange of data between two Android phones and Android to iOS and between iOS phones, it's all different. So the code bases are different, and that actually ends up creating a lot of work for us to build and test it.
Wait, I see Sassy is here. Hold on, let me add him. Sassy,
It's
welcome.
hey, Mike. Sorry.
Ramesh has been holding his own here. He's actually quite well informed. I mean, he's a CTO, so you'd expect that, but he's
Yeah.
really like I have him going into the weeds. So,
Okay.
and Sassy, I'm a little bit under the weather today, so apologies if I'm coughing or drinking tea. So we were just talking about BLE, and I've been, I have to say, I don't know a ton about BLE. I think this is really, really cool. Um,
Mhm.
and you almost answered my question, Ramesh. I guess the question I'm sort of getting at is there a certain version of Android or iOS that you need, or does this actually go back pretty far, even into some of the older devices?
Um, so maybe I'll answer that question. So I think
Sure.
the initial target we had is 4.1. I think 4.1 is pretty much in all the phones that we know universally right now
Uh-huh.
available, the BLE version. So the target scope is to make sure every older phones should also be supportable. So all the way from 4.1 we should be able to work.
I see. Okay, so I want to pivot a little bit into the trust model. I'm very interested in trust models. And so, okay, so you have this new wallet that has this cool new capability to do BLE presentation. What's the trust model for verifiers? Like how would you see verifiers getting onboarded? Because the wallet has to know that it trusts, this verifier in order to share credentials. Is that built in at the protocol level, or how does that work? I don't know who wants to take that.
Okay, I'll take that question. Ramesh, you can add in where you think is needed. At the BLE level, the expectation is you are in proximity. You are in front of the person who claims to be a verifier, and you know him before you're sharing the data. It's just like you're tapping your debit card onto a Paytm on a device, just because you know that, or you're purchasing, or you're making a transaction with them day in, day out. So the trust model could be out of bound in all essence. Um, in a sense, you could also think of a wallet to enable and say that, look, from the cash list that you have been regularly transacting, this guy doesn't look like a typical verifier that you have been transacting so far. Do you still want to transact? Because at the end of the day, it's the human who has to make a decision whether he wants to trust the verifier or not. And some of that could be cached and kept within the wallet at a temporary level, and we could do away with that. That's one scope that we were thinking in the BLE you could do. Otherwise, it's very difficult for us to think that you would go to a relatively unknown place, an unknown verifier, and you would try to do a BLE there. There are possibilities for that as well. For example, sometimes I get down in an airport where my network just doesn't work. My phone network doesn't work. I don't have an internet. I have the phone. I just don't have the internet yet.
Yeah.
And I may need to share it with the officer who's standing in front of me asking some questions, or I need to share it with the airline agency because my luggage was missing. So those are all valid use cases for BLE and proximity use cases where you trust each other with the conversations and out of bound that you're done. And you could rely upon that trust as a foundation. As a wallet, we would like the wallet to just inform the end user that, hey, you're sharing with somebody that we have not been able to verify. Are you sure you want to do this? And that should be good
I
enough
see what you're saying. Yeah, I was sort of wondering if this was going to fall back to PKI, where
Oh, no.
when you're offline, if you're online, then you can always grab a certificate or grab metadata. But if you're offline, it makes it a little more challenging because the verifier list needs to be there. And I was wondering if there's any mechanism maybe where you have let's say a number of verifiers with certificates that you trust. Is there anything like that, or just up to the person to make the call? I want to I realize it's untrusted. I'm just going to go ahead and share.
I think our current model doesn't include PKI. You know the flaws that we have seen in PKI and the absolute trust
Yes,
that you do that, right?
we don't
And the
need any more
statement.
PKIs. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we have to get out of it for sure. And building over a broken model is not a good one. I think the user is well known to make his decisions better. The guys who are going to use a wallet and a smartphone, the expectation is he does know, and in proximity case, you are interacting with a fellow human next to you, and there are a lot of out of bound trust that people build. We should not question that. I think that's the fundamental way in which humans have evolved, and we should let that trust to continue and further. And of course, we should find ways of him to mark them as distrusted or hotlist them, and other frameworks could exist out of bound to send a hotlist later, so that you could stop the fraudsters and others there. But when you're physically present, I think that trust is far more trustable. And we should rely on build above that human trust that we have built for generations.
I see. And Ramesh and I were just talking about the OpenID BLE profile standard. I forget, it's like OpenID for verifiable presentation over BLE. It came out in 2023. and then that's very interesting. But I'm wondering if there are any gaps you see. Are there more gaps that we need to fill, either in the verifiable credential landscape or in the OpenID landscape or other landscapes to make this new BLE presentation work?
So from our perspective, I think there is some more work that we have to do within the BLE. Right now, the proximity use cases doesn't seem to click well with the use cases that that people are on the ground, because we don't see much takers yet for the BLE itself. But we are of a strong belief that in the domain, at least where we operate, BLE is going to be extremely helpful. And still the proximity based situations that demand us to give the credentials when we are on the phone and without a network, there are several situations that we would encounter. So we strongly feel that is a need. But I think we still have to fix the profile. There are certain dependency that we have deeply involved with BLE, which an Android version supports, but the iOS doesn't support, because BLE is one of those cases where it works to a great extent, but there are smaller problems between the iOS and the Android, and we need to neutralize the spec for it. So that is some changes that we have to adapt into the spec. We know what to do, but we definitely would like to adapt that change into the spec.
To which spec, actually?
The BLE, OpenID for BLE spec.
The OpenID spec, okay. Yeah.
So if you have enough takers and there is larger interest for it, I think we should be able to definitely do it. From MOSIP side, we put out the open library and other things. We're looking for a couple of more people to build a library so that we could then be sure what we say works on the ground there.
Ramesh, I actually wanted to ask you, I saw the announcement that some of the code got contributed to the Open Wallet Foundation, and I'm curious, what did you decide to contribute, and why did you decide contributing it to the OWF was the right thing to do?
The first contribution is actually the BLE implementation itself. That is the bit that we contributed to OWF. The idea is that if this has to be available in other wallet implementations and supported, it'll be good to have it in a common space. It's easier for people to discover where there are multiple options. So that's the reason that we put it out in OWF. And I'm also hoping that OWF will allow for a common architecture and some interoperability in components to also evolve over a period of time. So with I think that in mind, we have put some of our eggs in that basket.
Quick follow-up question. Is anyone actually using this? Like, are there any real-world presentations using BLE? Or is this really, because you guys have put a ton of work into this, is it more speculative, or are there real-world use cases out there right now?
The honest answer is that we have seen a lot of people actually using several of our components, and the information necessarily does not flow back to us on what's live in most places. That's the nature of open source. We are directly engaged only with a few governments where we assist, where there is a request for us to assist them. So I can confidently say that there are components of NG in production in places, for sure. But in the government sector, we are still waiting for completion of few of our pilots, and post-pilot, it'll go into production in certain cases. I believe that kiosks are government kiosks which offer service are one of the first ones which will actually start leveraging this capability of BLE to offer services to people with phones in an offline way. So I think that it'll take some time for it to go, but there are discussions with use case departments of various governments, and we are likely to see that. But the pace of government is something that uh, we can't predict it exactly, right? How things happen.
Yeah, interesting. So Sassy, I'll ask you the hardest questions about credential management. Revocation. So what are the is there any, I don't know where you are on this topic at all, but is there any how would you actually revoke a credential? Let's say a credential gets issued to a wallet and the government decides, oh, this was a mistake, we want to revoke it. What does that look like?
So right now, the revocation does not exist within the NG stack,
Okay.
Mike. For various reasons. Of course, we're a very small team working on this project. It's the larger team in the MOSIP. This is a very small team. There is a lot of effort to work, and there has been some contributions that came in on the revocation. The first attempt of revocation is going to be the IETF standard that has been put out based on bit status. So combination of bit status and others. So we're trying to be compliant to that
You're
standard.
talking about the OAuth status list.
OAuth status list. Yeah.
It's in final draft, right? Or final, like, I don't think it's a RFC yet, but yeah. Okay. That's what I was going to ask about. Yeah.
Got it. So we closely looking at that to work out. That would be one of our first work. But the internal thinking in the revocation is, I think, in order to be a lot more privacy friendly, we have to think about some accumulator models as well. While it has its own complexities, in the longer run, the problem with the credentials, the revocations, and others is it starts revealing too much of information about the end user and his association with the verifiers, and the traceability, which we kind of did better with the OAuth than what we are going to do with the verifiable credentials with the revocation in place. So that's one of the reasons why we didn't adopt it in the beginning, but there is really valid use cases for revocation. We are interacting with the governments. Sometimes things do go wrong and they have to revoke. Yeah. So that's a human nature, right? If somebody did a wrong job or somebody gave a wrong information and ended up credential being leaked or given out. So in that essence, the OAuth status list seems to be our first bet. But we think we still have to evolve there to be a lot more privacy friendly with the revocation. There was some very interesting work done by, I forgot his name, I think Dan from Japan, where I met him in IAW last time, Mike, when we caught up last time. They had a very interesting model for revocation and issuance and the traceability. They were able to do some pseudonymous IDs through which you can't trace the individual. Clearly, you would know that he is the one who presented it, but you can't trace him back. If you have two relying parties colliding or two verifiers colliding, you would still not find out it's the same person. So a lot of work and internal discussions has happened, but nothing yet you would see in the code base of ours so far. But OAuth status list is the first one.
Yeah, I've been advocating that validation means checking the signature, checking the contents, and checking revocation status. So I think we need to sort of evangelize that idea. Like, validation doesn't just mean checking the signature. It also means checking for revocation, which we are kind of reverting to PKI world a little bit there. But I think well, at least status list is a way more efficient way to do this. So I'm a big fan of that spec.
One addition to whatever you said, Mike, just want to word of a caution there that I think there are certain use cases in the world that you will see where it could be revoked credential, but still you may want to accept it because the revocation was done by a state actor where you think he's victim of a state actor, right? There are use cases in the real world situations that we encounter today. For
example, my passport's still valid even as identity, even if it's expired. Whether you enforce the expiration, you might say, well, we don't accept it, but it's still a valid ID. So yeah. I think that's true.
I just want to make sure that is really set down in people's mind, that they just don't think expiry means, hey, throw it away. Revoke means throw it away. It's not that. It's still
Yeah.
valid document in all sense, and we want to be
Well,
careful about what we do with it.
it's a risk that it has to be factored in by the verifier.
Okay.
So yeah, because it doesn't have the same risk profile as a non-revoked one, but yeah. So Ramesh, I'll ask you the other hard question about about credential, which is selective disclosure. Does the wallet support enabling the end user to select sort of, let's say I go to that kiosk, and I don't want to tell the kiosk everything. I just want to tell the kiosk, my date of birth and my name. Is there support for selective disclosure in the wallet?
Yes, we have for the longest of times been having process workarounds for it, but right now we have actually started supporting it at the protocol level or format level, I would say. So we have started rolling out code for supporting SDJOT as a selective
Okay.
disclosure
Another
format.
Christina Yasuda special. So yeah, she's the
Yeah,
most productive, one of the most productive expert
absolutely.
engineers. Yeah.
And we took our own sweet time before going in that direction.
It's
We wanted to be
complicated.
sure that it actually uh, works efficiently and meets the requirements. And I think the OpenID working groups have been great places for actually asking questions and
Hmm.
meaningful questions and actually getting uh, impactful changes done to the specifications also, right? So
Right.
we are very thankful for that. And so with that, we will be having selective disclosure at the document format level. We already have selective disclosure at a policy level at issuance. So you could actually get multiple types of credentials. You could choose which credential to share so that you're actually sharing a limited, smaller credential rather than just getting one credential from which you can choose and share. The problem with choosing and sharing is that uh, you will need the wallet to sign, and then we are going back to the same PKI world. We didn't want that. So that's why it had to be either server signed credentials or it had to be uh, something which works without expensive approaches. So SDJOT kind of fit the bill very well because we could still sign it on the server. The wallet only signs the presentation. The
Hmm.
underlying credential itself is not composed by the wallet, right? It's still from the server. So we sorted the cost as well as the ability to support all kinds of phones with SDJOT. So SDJOT, we should have a release for that code in the next couple of months. Like it's undergoing testing as we speak.
Sassy, any thoughts on selective disclosure, SC John? Do Ramesh cover it pretty much?
Yeah, SD chart is a great shortcut to get the um, necessary deeds with selective disclosure. We still think it's just the first step to get there. But our current roadmap, Mike, if the published one includes both the BLS and the SD chart. SD chart took the priority with the speed at which everywhere it's getting implemented and people adopting it, and the easier nature of our adoption. So it took the front seat to get it fast. But the BLS implementation as well, we will be rolling out very soon. We think both are necessary to begin with, while both doesn't necessarily finish everything that is needed in the privacy side, but it's a good start. SDJ has the lowest entry barrier to get in, and the next is the BLS in there. We still think this whole selective disclosure and the privacy problem that we are trying to address is at least to get a proper one out. At least I think it's almost 2 years. We still have to work hard. We still have to get the pseudonymous ID work. We need to get the JWK key same key in every credential, everywhere you share, it's same key. You go back to these old PKI days. So I have one key and literally use everywhere, and I'm identifiable with that key in every place is a in a view is a disaster as well. I think for the next 2 years we will fight this battle. It's going to be longer, and hopefully we'll find more and more better, efficient solutions.
See, oh man. Ramesh, just curious about you mentioned the roadmap and SD being on that, but are there other important things that you see on the roadmap for NG Wallet or verifiable credentials support in general?
Yeah, so NG, while it started as a wallet, primarily as an authenticator for proving identity, we have expanded the roadmap to a full-fledged credential stack. So the wallet now has support for beyond identity credentials, and as we said, we had support for VC, the W3C VC out of the box to start with 1.1. 2.0 has been finalized recently, so we'll be rolling out support for 2.0 as well as SDJOT. And as Sashi mentioned, BBS is something we are also looking at for supporting. And beyond that, on the stack also includes a NG Certify module for creation, which supports creation of credentials in various known formats, plus issuance protocols. So we support OpenID for VCI right now, but we are looking at support for DITCOM also coming in. But largely, the prioritization will depend on adoption and what our customers and countries ask for. Right, that's how the prioritization gets done. But then, in the crosshairs, we have DITCOM also, both on the issuance as well as on the presentation side. And apart from this, support for trust networks are something that we are always watching out to see if some really viable model comes in, or if any one of our customer countries comes up with a specific model. We will then actually try to see what kind of support we can incorporate into the whole stack for the trust aspects. So these are largely the kind of components that we'll work on. On the verification side, for consuming the credentials, we are building SDKs. Our current first version SDK is in Java. We will be actually looking at rolling out multiple language support for those SDKs so that different application stacks can incorporate the data consumption and verification tools as part of their application. So that's largely the kind of work that we are having on our roadmap, but we always keep our eyes peeled for what's emerging and what's new.
We need Rust libraries.
Absolutely.
So we can build it into the seederling. Sassy, anything you want to add on the roadmap? What are the biggest challenges you're facing and that you see as the top priorities? I know there's probably like 20 things you could do. And when I worked at Rackspace, we always had like a list of 20 things, and it's only the top three that ever got done. So what do you see as really the top priorities?
Yeah, I think it's so I come from a security background, Mike. That's what I really do within India, but in MOSIP is what I do, a full-time engineering role. So for me, the privacy is a dominant one. I think the whole thing that we did with eSignet and MOSIP in terms of the privacy, the virtual IDs, the handles, you can't be defined by one ID. I think there's quite a lot of improvements we did on privacy side with the central identity systems. Now with the verifiable credentials, I think we are again back to ground zero. And from there, we have to now start the privacy. So that's a little embarrassing to put the roadmap out and then we see, hey, we stand for privacy, and then we look here and we say, hey, here is your verifiable credentials with one ID, one key that is in your wallet, and literally everything is mapped to that key and that ID.
Yeah, correlatable potentially.
Yes, it's fully correlatable, and sometimes it's embarrassing to tell what you said 2 years before about privacy and MOSIP central ID kind of systems, and then you said now it's decentralized, but you're absolutely traceable within the verification systems. Yeah, that's the biggest thing. That's the battle between us and the product team to see how do we actually get to business, at the same time how do we stand for what we stood for, and ensure that we continue to make the progress. We also understand the real world can't wait for us to be 100% privacy safe and then get in. The real world has other use cases in reality, and today people really share a copy of your license, your passport, everything to the government. Right.
And the CTO is asking about web wallets. Is that a priority?
That's absolutely an interesting one. Okay, that is something that we're very heavily pushing on. One of the goals is to see if we can reach out to everybody in the country, and the web wallet is just coming up. It's a little more later thought, but it's coming up very fast into our system.
Does that mean cloud wallet, or does that mean like what does web wallet mean?
Yeah,
I mean, I like the idea of cloud wallets because I worry about people having credentials in their phone. So, I mean, cloud wallet, you lose some control, but you gain the ability, if your phone drops in the ocean, to restore that wallet.
Yeah. So yeah, in a similar sense, but we had the use cases where people may not have phones. If you're looking at a country level target, there are people who are not going to have phones. What are we going to do for them? We also have a situation where people have feature phones. So essentially, your credential could stay in the cloud or in the web. And can you now use your USSD or other channels to actually let a presentation to be done on your behalf with a different form of authentications, not the OpenID kind of authentications, but the USSD had a very different way of authenticating individuals and the phones. So you could try various different models. So that's the story behind the web wallet. So that there are a lot of interesting talks that we're doing internally to see how it can actually change a feature phone to actually do it. Or people could walk into a cyber cafe or a common terminal, and can they do a transaction on that common terminal? Could also be enabling people who are living in the creeks, in the remote villages where connectivity is not very common, phones are not very common. So that's why the CTO is very excited about the web wallet. Yeah, it's a big one.
It's part of our key goal of inclusion. We want to make sure that the digital journey is not only for people with high-end smartphones in well-connected environments.
Right. And I was going to say, when I was looking at the Ethiopian has a really fascinating, diverse, population. A lot of them haven't even used the internet, let alone use a phone. So, yeah, there is a big bridge there to cross with some of these citizens. Well, let's move to last thoughts. Sassy, why don't we start with you? Last thoughts, verifiable credentials update on wrong one. Hold on. Here we go, Sassy. Last thoughts on what do people need to know about the great work that MOSIP is doing in verifiable credentials?
Okay. I think we spoke about the wallet and the on the cloud wallet kind of situations, but there's one unique work which we've been pushing hard in the market is people are still going to rely on paper to a greater part. I understand in some part of the world, phones may become the dominant players, but paper is not going away very soon. We still think verifiable credentials on the paper is still going to be one of the dominant play. And there is a standard called ID Claim 169 that's been put in place from the MOSIP community. Hopefully, we'll soon move to IETF and try to get one more draft out of it. But that's the big work which could get the basic government documents, basic identity proof as a simple QR code on the paper so that people can actually, in real world situations, can actually use it. So that's one big work that we want to just tell people that feel free to contribute, feel free to work. It's not just MOSIP's work. There are a lot of other private companies which worked within MOSIP community to build this. So it's not just our work there, but that's a good one to start for basic ID proof, the foundational ID proof for individuals.
And Ramesh, last thoughts?
Yeah, I think we are getting into exciting times. Our collaboration on the collaboration efforts on the wallet front and the credentialing front are scaling up big time. We are going to be in Geneva if we get our visas for digital collaboration meetup, and we already have some very exciting conversations lined up on trust as well as cross-border usage and interoperability, and we are looking forward to these conversations and collaborating much more with the partners.
Cool. Well, with that, I will announce the next episode, Digital Rights in the Age of AI Agents. We have some really, really hard questions coming up with agentic AI identity and authorization. So we're going to probably have multiple episodes on this in the future. So please join us. Note next week is Identiverse. If you want to hear my talk on embeddable PDPs, it's the last talk before the conference ends next Friday. And but we're no live streams next week. I can't do live streams and be at a conference, so we'll resume the week after next week. Please join us. Thanks, audience. Thanks, Ramesh. Thanks, Sassy, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for having me.